In many stock selection models, there's some sort of analysis done based upon firm-specific characteristics. For example, we might be sorting by firm-specific characteristics or running a cross-sectional regression whereby we're predicting next period's return with this period's characteristics. And this cross-sectional regression technique I want to talk about in some detail. The usual type of cross-sectional regression looks at many thousands of firms at a point in time and regresses upon a number of lagged attributes matched by firm. For the purpose of illustration, let's make this very simple and let's think about one attribute, the book-to-price ratio. Now, if you run a cross-sectional regression of next period's returns on this period's price-to-book ratio, or book-to-price ratio, then if there's a value type of relation whereby the low book-to-price ratios indicate that the firm has good prospects, and high book-to-price suggesting perhaps the firm is overvalued, then you'll get a significant slope coefficient in the cross-sectional regression. Now, there's a number of issues that we have to deal with when we run a regression like that. So to make this very tangible, suppose we have 5,000 firms, 5,000 returns in, let's say, January, and we regress on the book-to-price ratios that are available in December. We get an intercept and a slope. Now, when people actually run these types of regressions, they notice a few things. One immediate problem is that the slope coefficient tends to not be the same as you estimate this through time, because every month you have to re-estimate. Indeed, the slope coefficient could even change sign, which would mean potentially switching all of your stocks. So one month you might be pursuing a value type of strategy, and the next month you're pursuing like a non-value strategy. So what's going on in this regression? Why would that slope coefficient change through time? And actually, if you really think about this regression, the more thought you put into it, the more you realize that this regression has got some fundamental specification problems. Does it seem reasonable to you that for any firm, that its sensitivity to its own price-to-book ratio or book-to-price ratio is basically the same? There's a common coefficient. Every single firm is hit with the same slope coefficient. So 10% change in the book-to-price ratio translates into a particular change in the expected return. It doesn't matter what firm we're talking about, the change is expected to be the same. It doesn't matter what book-to-price ratio we're talking about, the change is going to be the same. So this regression, what it does is it forces the same sensitivity to book-to-price ratios on every single firm. Now, what we do in this course is to actually figure out a way to get around this particular constraint. Indeed, in a simple risk model, like a capital asset pricing model or a multi-factor asset pricing model, it's likely that the risk loadings, or betas, are functions of fundamental characteristics like the book-to-price ratio. In that case, the risk is changing through time as the book-to-price ratio is changing. And indeed, we can think of a very simple time series regression for an individual firm And that regression would allow the beta of that firm to depend upon the book-to-price ratio. We'd estimate a regression where we would regress each firm's return one by one on the market to get the usual beta, and then a second variable. And the second variable is the market multiplied by the lagged book-to-price ratio. We get a firm-specific coefficient on that interaction term. What I usually suggest people do is to take that firm-specific coefficient on the interaction term, multiply that by the firm's raw book-to-price ratio, and then estimate the cross-sectional regression. So let me be clear here. The usual cross-sectional regression takes the returns on, let's say, 5,000 securities and regresses it on the lagged book-to-price ratio. Now, I've argued that that regression is misspecified, that we have to allow for firm-specific sensitivities to price to book. Now, we cannot estimate that regression with a coefficient for every single firm, because that would mean there would be 5,001 coefficients and only 5,000 data points. It's impossible to estimate that. What I'm suggesting is a way around this. Go firm by firm, estimate a time series regression, regress on the market multiplied by the lag book-to-price ratio. Pick off that second coefficient. Multiply the second coefficient times the raw book-to-price ratio for that firm. Create a new variable, and let's call it book-to-price star. Book-to-price star incorporates firm-specific sensitivities to that particular characteristic. What it does is it puts all of the firms' book-to-price ratios on the same footing. Instead of comparing apples to oranges, we're comparing apples to apples. Now we can rerun our cross-sectional regression, regress the returns on the lagged price-to-book star. Now we can do this in principle with any firm-specific attribute. What we do is we make this regression more stable through time and fundamentally better specified. In a sort of analysis that I've done on international data and data within the US, that the adjusted attribute, when we adjust for firm-specific sensitivities, outperforms the raw attribute in terms of performance in trading strategies.